Book 3, Lady Fee at Westminster. The story. Lady Fee is well received at court, and the judges and counselors seek her favor with promises of help. The king decides to pardon her, provided she will marry his knight Conscience, and to this she consents. But Conscience himself will not hear of it, and violently denounces her before the king. He defeats Fee's argument and prophesies the coming of a messianic kingdom of truth and peace, where Fee shall be no more. Lady Fee, deserted by all her companions, was brought before the king by the beadles and bailiffs, and the king, calling one of his counselors, I need not mention his name, told him to take her and see that she was properly looked after. I shall examine her myself, the king said, and ask her outright which man she would really prefer. If she proves amenable and is willing to do as I tell her, I intend, God willing, to pardon her for this offense. Then, as the king commanded, this counselor politely put his arm around Fee and guided her to her chamber, where music and other entertainments were provided for her amusement. All those who resided at Westminster treated Fee with the greatest respect. Some of the judges, with the clergy's permission, hastened along full of gallantry and good humor, to console her as she sat in her boudoir. Do not lose heart, Lady Fee, they said. They have no cause for distress. We will speak to the king and smooth the way for you, and we can promise you that you will be able to marry whom you wish in spite of Conscience and all his tricks. Fee thanked them graciously for their great kindness, giving everyone presents of gold and silver vessels, with rings, rubies, and valuables of all kinds, not forgetting a gold piece even for the lowest of their retainers. Then the judges took their leave of her. Whereupon the clergy and counselors came to comfort her in the same way, saying, Take heart, lady, for we will always be at your disposal, for as long as there's life left in you, do not hesitate to make full use of us. Fee politely returned the compliment, and said that for her part she would always be faithful to them, get them titles, and obtain seats for them in the bishop's court. You need not worry about your education, she said. As long as you're friends of mine, I'm well known in places where learning gets you nowhere. Her next visitor was a friar, come to hear her confession. Speaking in the dulcet undertones of the confession box, he said to Fee, Do not worry how many men you have had to do with, clerics or laymen, or if falsehood has hung at your heels for half a century. I will still give you absolution, for a small fee, of course. Shall we say 1 horse load of wheat? For that I will undertake you to be your own beadsman, and spread your influence among the gentry and the clergy, undermining Conscience wherever I go. So Fee knelt before him and made her confession shamelessly. And when she had told him a suitable tale or two, she gave him a coin, accepting as her beadsman and personal agent. Then, after gabbling through the form of absolution, he added, We are having a stained glass window made for us, and it's proving rather expensive. If you would care to pay for the glazing yourself and have your name engraved into the window, you may have no doubts of your eternal salvation. Ah, if I can be sure of that, I will do anything for you, Father, she said. You can count me your unfailing friend, but never be hard on those lords and ladies who give way to their lusts. Do not blame them for it, for lechery is a frailty of the flesh, a natural instinct, Father. That's what all the books say. We all began that way, so there can't be much harm in it, as long as one avoids a scandal, and it's quite the easiest to forgive of all the 7 deadly sins. So you be kind to them, and then I will roof your church, build you a cloister, whitewash your walls, glaze your windows, have paintings and images made, and pay for everything. People will all be saying, I am a lay sister of your order. But God forbids us to blazon our good deeds on walls and windows, lest they become mere monuments of pride and worldly pomp. For all your motives and purposes lie open to God. He sees your natural greed and knows where the money really belongs. Therefore I advise you, lords and ladies, have done with such inscription, and do not cry for the notice of men of God when you want to give alms, lest you have your reward on earth and your heaven too. And let not thy left hand know what thy right hand does, for so the gospel bids men to do good deeds. And you, mayors and officers, who uphold the law, and are the chief link between king and people, be sure that you punish all fraudulent tradesmen, the brewers, the bakers, the butchers, and the cooks, in your pillories and ducking stools. For these are the men who do most harm to the poor, poisoning them with adulterated food at extortionate prices. They grow rich by selling at retail prices and invest in properties by robbing the bellies of the poor. For how could they build themselves such tall houses and buy up lands and tenants if they were honest dealers? But Fee has begged the mayor to accept money from them, or if not money, plate and gold rings and other valuables, to let them stay in business undisturbed. For my sake, she says, leave them all alone and let them overcharge just a wee bit. Now hear what Solomon said for the benefit of such mayors and officials. Fire shall consume the tabernacles of those who freely take bribes. That is, all who expect gratuities or New Year boxes because they hold office will have their houses and homes burned to ashes. The king, coming from his councils, sent for Fee at once, and a band of his officers in great high spirits escorted her to his private chamber. Then the king spoke graciously to her and said, This is not the first time, lady, that you have acted unwisely, but you never did worse than what you accepted fraud. However, I will forgive you this time, but never do such a thing again as long as you live. Now I have a knight called Conscience who has recently come from overseas. If he is willing to make you his wife, will you have him? Certainly, my liege. God forbid that I should refuse. Hang me if I'm not completely in your hands. So Sir Conscience was summoned to appear before the king in council. He made a low obeisance to the king and knelt to hear his wishes. Are you willing to marry this woman if I give my consent? Said the king. She would gladly accept you as a husband. God forbid, said Conscience. I'd rather be damned than marry such a wife. She is fickle and faithless and has led countless men to sin. Thousands already have been betrayed by trusting in her riches. She makes wantons of wives and widows, using presents as baits to lure them into sin. She has poisoned popes and corrupted the Holy Church, and your own father she ruined by her false promises. I swear to God, you won't find a greater bawd between heaven and hell, though you search the whole earth. She is as lecherous as a monkey, a talebearer too, and as common as a cart track to every wayfaring wretch, monks and minstrels and the lepers that lie under the hedges. The only men who treat her with respect are jurors and summoners and such like, and county sheriffs who would be ruined without her. For by bribing them she causes men to lose their lands and their lives. She gives gold to the gaolers to let prisoners loose, and lets criminals wander at large, while honest men who have done no harm are seized, cast into irons, hanged to satisfy her spite. What does she care about threats of excommunication? She keeps the bishop's men in clothes, and can get absolution whenever she likes. Her purse can do more in a single month than the king's privy seal can do in 6. Even the Pope confides in her, as is well known to those who buy livings in Rome. For it is she and Simony who seal her papal mandates. She makes bishops of men who can scarcely read. She provides livings for parsons and for lawless priests to spend their lives with mistresses and concubines and rear families. Heaven help that land where she wins the king's favor, for she will always smile on falsehood and trample on the truth. Christ, how her jewels mow down the magistrates, how she perjures herself in the law courts and chokes up the course of justice. Her florins fly so thick that truth is smothered with them. She bends the law as she likes. She chooses her own days for settling disputes, and she makes men lose for her sake what the law might have won them. A poor man is bewildered and confused. He may plead in the courts forever, but the law will not move an inch. It hates to reach a verdict, and without bribes or presents, fee will satisfy no one. So she brings disaster upon barons and burgesses, and all commoners who try to lead honest lives. This, my liege, is her way of life, and God confound her and all her supporters, for she has coupled education with avarice, and she holds such sway over men of property that, no matter how the poor are wronged, there is nothing they can do about it. Then Fee looked aggrieved and whined to the king for a chance to speak and defend herself. The king willingly allowed her. "Excuse yourself if you can, by all means," he said, "for with all these accusations of conscience you are like to be packed off for good." "Ah, my good lord," she said, "when you know the truth of the matter, you will credit him less. In times of trouble, Fee is very useful. And you know well enough, Conscience, that I did not come here in pride to quarrel or slander you. You know too, you liar, unless you try to gloss it over, that you have come crawling to me many times in the past, and laid your hands on my gold and doled it as you liked. So why you should be so angry with me now, I cannot imagine. For I can still honor you with my favors if I choose, and bolster up your courage in ways that you never dreamt of. But you have foully slandered me before the king here. For I never killed or planned the death of a king, nor did any of the things that you say. I swear by the king, and in the French wars I did him no wrong at all, unlike you, who shamed him again and again and again, creeping into hovels to keep your fingers warm, and fearing the winter would last forever, frightened to death of a storm clouds, and then rushing home because your belly was empty. You robbed the poor men without pity. You thief, and carried their money away on your back to sell at Calais. Meanwhile, I stayed behind with my lord to protect his life. I cheered his men up and made them forget their miseries, and slapped them on the back to liven up their spirits till they fairly danced for joy, hoping to have me all to themselves. By God, if I had been commander of his men, I'd wager my life I have made him my master of the whole land, from end to end, and king too. And what an honor that would have been for his family. The smallest brat among them would now be as good as a baron. But then you, Conscience, stepped in with your coward's advice to give it all up, the richest realm under the sun, for a handful of silver. Why, a king, as guardian of the realm, is bound to fee those who serve him and show courtesy to all men, especially to foreigners, with handsome gifts. It is for fees that people love and respect him. Without me, how could the nobles or even emperors retain young men to ride about for them? Even the Pope and the prelates accept offerings and pay fees to those who uphold their laws. Servants all get fixed wages for services rendered. Beggars demand fees for their begging, and minstrels fees for entertaining. The king receives fees from his men to keep peace in the land. Schoolmasters get fees for their pupils. Skilled workmen take fees for their apprentices, and even priests accept a fee in food or mass offerings for teaching people virtue. And surely merchants must make a profit to carry on their trade. There's not a man on earth that can live without fees. By heaven, said the king to Conscience, Fee has certainly won her point, it seems to me. No, Conscience said, as he knelt down on the ground. By your leave, my lord, there are two different kinds of payment. The one is the gift of heaven which God of his grace gives to those who do their work well on earth. The psalmist speaks of this. Lord, who shall dwell in thy tabernacle with thy saints? Who shall dwell in thy holy hill? And King David answers the question too. He that walketh uprightly and worketh righteousness. That is, he who is unspotted from this world and single-minded, who has acted with reason and justice and sought after truth, who has taught the poor and has not lived by usury, who putteth not out his money to usury, nor taketh rewards against the innocent. So all who help the innocent and side with the righteous, doing good to them without fees and maintaining truth, shall have this payment from God in the time of greatest need, when they leave this world. But there is also another kind of payment, a lucre without measure, which men in authority grasp at, the bribes they get for supporting evildoers. And of them the Psalter also speaks in whose hands is wickedness, and their right hand is full of gifts. And even the man who receives money from them shall pay a bitter price for it, unless the Scriptures lie. And priests who seek their own pleasure, exacting money for the masses, they saying, gain all their reward on earth, as we read in St. Matthew. Verily I say unto you, they have their reward. The money, my liege, which laborers receive from their master is not a fee at all, but a fair wage. Nor are there any fees for trading with goods. It is simply an exchange, one pennyworth for another. Tell me, you shameless fee, did you ever read the book of Samuel, nor notice why vengeance fell on Saul and his children? For God sent a message to Saul by his prophet Samuel that Agag, king of the Amalekites, and all his people must die for a deed done by their ancestors. Therefore, Samuel said to Saul, God himself commands you to obey him and do his will, to go with thy host to the land of the Amalekites, and slay all that you find there, men and beasts alike. Burn them to death, wives, widows, and children, all their estates and belongings, and everything you find, burn it, and carry nothing away, no matter how valuable. Take no booty, destroy it all, spare nothing, and it will be better for you. Because Saul coveted the booty and spared the life of the king and of his beasts against the prophet's warning, God told Samuel that Saul and all his seed should die and come to a shameful end. This is what your feast did for Saul, such harm that God hated him forevermore, and all his heirs after him. But I had better draw no conclusions from this, lest anyone should be offended. For this world is so changed now that the man who tells the truth to those in power is condemned first. Yet I am certain of one thing, for common sense has taught me to believe it, that reason shall reign supreme and rule over the nations. There are many who shall share the fate of Agag, for once more Samuel shall slay him, and Saul shall be condemned, and David shall be crowned king and subdue all kingdoms. Then one Christian king shall rule over the whole world. No more shall fee prevail, as she does now, but love and meekness and honesty shall be the rulers of the earth and the guardians of the truth. And if any man commits a sin against truth or takes a bribe to permit a falsehood, he shall have but one judge, and that is honesty. Lawyers shall no longer plead at the bar with their hoods of silk and cloaks of ermine. For as it is now, fee is a law unto herself. She makes lords of criminals and rules kingdoms over the heads of judges. But natural love and conscience shall come together, and turn law into an honest workman. Such love shall arise, and such peace and perfect truth among the people, that the Jews, amazed that men should be so truthful, will be filled with joy, thinking that Moses or the Messiah has come to earth. Any man who carries a sword, a lance, an axe, a dagger, or any kind of weapon shall be put to death, unless he sends it to the smithy to be turned into a scythe, a sickle, or a plowshare. They shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Men will pass their time in digging or plowing, spinning yarn or spreading dung, or else there will be nothing for them to do. The only kind of hunting left to priests will be for the souls of the dead. They will hammer at their psalms from morn until night. For if any of them hunt with hawks and hounds, they shall lose their boasted livings. No king or knight or officer or male shall tyrannize over the people, or summon them to serve on juries and compel them to take oaths. Each criminal will be punished according to his crime, heavily or lightly as truth shall decide. The king's court, the common court, the church court, and the chapter shall all be one court, with a single judge, one true tongue, an honest man who never opposed me. There shall be no more battles, and any blacksmith who forges a weapon shall perish by it. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war on any more. But before this comes to pass, men shall see the worst, and the sign of its coming will be 6 suns in the sky, with a ship and half a sheaf of arrows. And then an Easter full moon shall convert the Jews. And when they see these things, the Saracens shall sing the Gloria in excelsis. But to you, fee, and to Mahomet, will come disaster, for it is written, "A good name is rather to be chosen than great riches, and loving favor rather than silver or gold." Then Fee suddenly grew as furious as the wind. "I do not know any Latin," she said. "I leave that to the scholars. But you should read what Solomon says in the book of Proverbs. He that gives gifts wins the victory and has much honor withal." "Your quotation is quite correct, madame," said Conscience, "but you are likely a certain lady reading the scripture who, when she came to the words, 'prove all things,' was highly delighted." However, the text broke off at the end of the page, and if she had turned over, she would have found the rest of it. "Hold fast to that which is good." You, my lady, have done the same as she did. You've discovered half the text, but you could never find the rest. Not if you pored over Proverbs all day long. You need a scholar to turn the pages for you. Your visions would suit the lords of this world very well. But the sequel is bitter medicine for those who take bribes, for this is the text complete. He that gives gifts wins the victory and has much honor with all, but he that takes away the soul of him that receives it. End of Book 3.